The Shadow of the Night. It was a moonless night when he disappeared. Nobody saw him leave, but the village whispered his name at dawn. Yusuf, the son of Buba, had run away. I was there when it all began, and I can tell you his story. Yusuf was born in the dusty town of Gidan Jatau, nestled in the dry plains of northern Nigeria. His family was not wealthy, but they were respected. His father, Buba, was a farmer, a man who worked the earth with his hands and carried the weight of his family on his shoulders. Yusuf was the eldest of 4 children, and with that came expectations heavier than the sack of millet he often carried to the market. From the time Yusuf was a boy, people said he was different. While others laughed and played, he sat under the neem tree, staring at the horizon, as if searching for something far away. His mother called him a dreamer, but his father often frowned. "Dreams do not fill stomachs," Buba would say. Still, Yusuf dreamed. He dreamed of a life beyond the dusty fields and longed for a place where the sky seemed closer and the earth softer. But those dreams felt distant, like stars too far to touch. One Harmattan morning, life as Yusuf knew it began to unravel. His father, who had always seemed as solid as the baobab tree, fell ill. At first it was just a cough. Then the cough turned into weakness, and soon Buba could no longer rise from his mat. The villagers came with herbs and prayers, but nothing worked. Yusuf stayed by his father's side, wiping his brow and feeding him broth, but it was not enough. One cold evening, Buba breathed his last, and the family's world fell apart. In Gidan Jatau, tradition was sacred. When a man like Buba died, the burial had to be grand, a ceremony fit for someone who had carried the honor of his family. But Yusuf's family had no money for such things. The farm had barely produced enough to feed them that year, and the debt collectors had already taken what little grain they had stored. The king's men came soon after, led by Malam Yakubu, a man known for his sharp tongue and harder heart. "Yusuf," he said, his voice loud enough for the whole village to hear, "your father was a great man. He deserves a proper burial. Where is the cow for the feast? Where is the money for the drummers?" Yusuf stood before them, his hands trembling. "We have nothing," he whispered. "Nothing?" Malam Yakubu's face darkened. "Then you shame your father and your family. If you cannot give him the burial he deserves, you are not fit to be his son." The days that followed were filled with humiliation. Neighbors whispered behind their hands, and children pointed at Yusuf's siblings in the marketplace. The burden weighed heavy on Yusuf's shoulders. Every night, he lay awake, staring at the thatched roof of their hut, the weight of failure pressing down on him. Then came the night he left. I was the only one who saw him. I had gone out to fetch water from the well when I noticed a shadow moving near the edge of the village. It was Yusuf, carrying a small bundle on his back. "Yusuf!" I called out in a loud whisper. He froze, then turned to face me. His eyes were wide with fear, but there was also a kind of sadness in them that I cannot forget. "Where are you going?" I asked. "I cannot stay," he said, his voice shaking. "If I stay, they will ruin my family. They will take everything. I must go and find a way to save them." Yusuf's journey was not easy. He walked for days, surviving on wild berries and the little water he could find. Eventually, he reached Kano, a bustling city far from the quiet village he had known. The city was loud and overwhelming, but Yusuf was determined. He found work as a laborer, carrying heavy loads in the market. The pay was small, but he saved every coin he earned. At night, he slept under the open sky, dreaming of the day he could return to Gidan Jatau with enough money to restore his family's honor. Months turned into years. Yusuf learned the ways of the city and worked harder than anyone I had ever known. He sent money back to his family whenever he could, and slowly, the whispers in the village began to fade. Then one day Yusuf returned. It was just before sunset when he walked into the village, taller and stronger than I remembered. He carried a sack over his shoulder and a quiet confidence in his eyes. The villagers gathered around him, murmuring in surprise. Malam Yakubu was among them, his face unreadable. Yusuf did not say much. He simply handed the sack to the elders and said, "This is for my father." Inside were coins, enough to pay for the burial feast and cloth for new robes for the family. The villagers were silent, then erupted into cheers. That night we buried Buba with the honor he deserved. The drummers played, and the air was filled with the scent of roasted meat and the sound of laughter. Yusuf stayed in the village after that, but he was not the same. The boy who had once dreamed under the neem tree was now a man who understood the weight of sacrifice. He rebuilt his family's farm and became a pillar of the community. Whenever I think of Yusuf, I remember that moonless night when he left. He was just a boy then, running from the only home he had ever known. But when he returned, he was something more, a man who had faced the world and found his place in it. And that is why, to this day, we call him Yusuf Mai Gaskiya, Yusuf the man of truth.